Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. More specifically, a brand new Albums I Missed video. That's right, it's that magical time at the end of the month where we discuss all of the albums that we did not have the chance already to discuss. I missed them, hence the name of the video. Albums I Missed. Duh. But first, just a very quick reminder, the Metal Meltdown, by popular demand, will also be hosting a Resident Evil 4 drinking game and live stream this coming Friday, March 1st. The party starts at approximately 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm pumped, you're pumped. Anna, are you pumped? She might be asleep. I think she might be asleep. So be there or be square, folks, and I don't know about you, but I'd much rather be there than be square. I definitely can't pull off the square look for one. It's just not my style. Okay, let's move on to the actual content of this Albums I Missed video. You know, the part where I talk about the albums that I missed in February 2024. Yeah. Cool. First up, The Other Side of Mars, debut solo album from former Motley Crue guitarist Mick Mars. This thing fucking sucks. Yeah, that's all I got to say, really. I did a poll on the community tab of this channel asking you guys if you even gave a shit if I did a review or not. You pretty much overwhelmingly said, no, we don't give a shit. We don't care about this album. And I can understand why. Because this, I feel like, was a bit of a waste of time. It just bored me to tears, honestly. By no means incompetently put together or produced, just thoroughly uninteresting. I don't think it had anything unique or interesting to say. I don't think the songs were that dynamic or catchy or fun. It just kind of felt like a big, dumb, sappy, edgy butt rock record on par with something I might have heard in, like, the mid to late 2000s from some big fucking, like, stadium rock, alt-metal kind of butt rock band. It honestly even kind of feels in line with something that maybe Motley Crue would have done in, like, the 90s, you know? Like, I guess with that in mind, if your favorite Motley Crue album happens to be either the self-titled or Generation Swine, and you wanted that sound to get moodier and, like, more dumb and edgy, congrats, this might be your favorite album of all time. More power to you. I don't know. There's a few bluesy riffs here and there that I didn't think were that bad. The guitar tone has a nice, meaty presence, but these things don't really matter if the songs themselves just are not very interesting, and that's the fucking case here. The songs just aren't interesting. Let's move on with life. Let's move on to something more fun, please and thank you. Next up, we have Fall from Borknagar. A lot of people just kind of automatically assumed when I did the aforementioned Mick Mars community poll that because I probably wasn't going to review the Mick Mars album, because of how the poll turned out, that I was therefore going to review this album instead. That's obviously not the case, but, you know, that kind of had a big snowball effect, and this very quickly became, like, a highly requested album to review and talk about. Like, y'all are clearly loving Borknagar right now, and more power to ya, but I'm not sure if I'm personally feeling like that enthusiasm and excitement over Fall. Now, that's not to suggest that it's, like, bad or incompetent or even mediocre. It is a very, very, very well-made album. I'm just kind of, like, not feeling it, you know, at this very moment. Like, I listened to it, I enjoyed it while it was on. I think it's a very well-produced record. I like a lot of the clean vocals and a lot of different melodies and how that's interwoven into, like, icy, progressive black metal. It kind of feels like a more melodic take on something that Enslaved might do nowadays. And that's cool, and that's great, but I think I'd rather just go listen to Enslaved, honestly. I don't know. It just didn't really do, like, a lot for me. I acknowledge it. I appreciate the album. I don't think it's bad. It just didn't really do enough to capture my attention and, like, really excite me and wow me. Clearly, I'm in the minority, though. More power to y'all. Please continue to enjoy this record. Whatever. It's all good in the hood, man. Next up, we have Time, brand new studio album from Infected Rain. And I think if you took the most mediocre and uninteresting elements of Born of Osiris and Ginger and you mashed it together and nuked it in the microwave, it would probably look and sound a little bit like this. Lots of genty grooves and moody vocal passages and dry guttural vocal assaults. I'm not feeling it. Nothing is mixed all that well. Nothing is seasoned all that well. In general, I feel like this thing just has the most uninteresting elements of modern metal, all kind of mushed together, under-seasoned, underdeveloped, undercooked, under everything. It's mid in the purest definition of the word. I would have genuine questions for somebody who was like, oh my god, Infected Rain are such a unique and exciting band, because, like, god damn, this shit just bored the crap out of me. Bored the shit out of me. Let's move on. Next up, we have Noname Graves from the last 10 Seconds of Life, and it's fine. It's fine. Like, whatever. I don't care. I'll say this. If you're in the mood for some meaty, beefy, muscular, like, brutal deathcore, very simple, very basic, straight to the fucking point, boom, you've found it. Congratulations. And I will also say that, to its credit, Noname Graves is a lot less dull and flat than the self-titled album in 2022. It's also more cohesive, and I do like some of the special guests that are thrown in here as well. Like Mick Mars from Suffocation shows up, Devin Swank from Sanguisugabog shows up. By no means mind-blowing, revolutionary stuff, but hey, if you're in the mood to return to, like, the glory days of late 2000s, early 2010s, like deathcore, if you're in the mood for some All Shall Perish style shit, go for it. More power to you. You're gonna love this. Next up, we have Screaming Steel, sophomore studio album from Durban the Band, featuring James Durban, the man, former Quiet Riot lead singer, but perhaps more famously also former American Idol contestant. I think he did pretty well on that show back in the day, too. I think he made it to, like, the top 8 or some shit like that. I remember talking about the debut album, The Beast Awakens, back in 2021, I want to say, and I liked it. I think I like Screaming Steel a little bit more, though. It's a little bigger, it's a little bolder, it's a little louder, more confidence in the vocals, some really strong hooks. Instrumentally, it's kind of basic. It definitely feels like the guitars and the drums and bass are actually tuned down a little bit so as to highlight Durban's vocals a lot more. But I'm not really bothered by that because, I mean, Durban is honestly kind of an excellent vocalist. The whole thing ends up feeling like a hodgepodge of, like, classic Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, and Saxon without feeling, like, overly nostalgic, without feeling like total full-blown, like, 80s metal worship. It maybe isn't on the same level as some other kind of, like, classic heavy metal style records we've heard as of late from Striker or Spirit Adrift, but it's fun, it's flashy, and if you're still in the mood for that sound, it'll definitely get the job done. Next up, we have Orchards of a Feudal Heaven, brand new collaborative album from Disfig and The Body, and I think it might just be a little bit too weird and noisy and fucked up for its own good. There's a lot of static, a lot of noise, a lot of gristle, a lot of moody, ethereal vocals mixed in with a lot of chaotic sections and, like, long, droning passages. Every once in a while, you'll get these, like, electronic pulsing beats and these, like, huge, moaning, anguished vocal displays, but for the most part, it is a lot of just, like, full-blown drone and noise, and I'm just not really feeling it right now. It doesn't help either. The album is just overwhelmingly loud. Like, even on a low volume, the audio is clipping like a motherfucker. It just kind of sounds like pure TV static and white noise at times. On a high volume especially, this isn't just grating, this is nearly deafening. Like, I was listening to this on a higher volume, not knowing at first how loud and noisy it was going to be, and I had to just straight up turn it off. Like, it was too fucking much. I'm really not too familiar with Disfig, and truthfully, there's nothing on this album that would convince me to want to be more familiar. As far as The Body is concerned, I've enjoyed some projects of theirs here and there. This leans more towards something that I'm not enjoying. I appreciate it, I respect it, but it's definitely not for me. Next up, we have Of the Last Human Being from Sleepytime Gorilla Museum. This is some crazy, artsy-fartsy, experimental rock, avant-garde metal with, like, progressive rock and, like, string instruments and all these wild, erratic vocal dynamics. It's fucking weird, and I fucking love it. This is the first thing Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum have put out in a long, long time. If I were to compare them to a more modern band, I guess Diablo Swing Orchestra would be the most fitting. They both definitely are just really crazy and they do whatever they want, and they both have this kind of penchant for taking from a broad, wide variety of music genres, both in and outside of rock and metal. But whereas Diablo Swing Orchestra, despite everything, is really fun, Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum is weird and anxious and dark. Like, I hear, like, King Crimson in this, I hear Genesis in this, I also hear, like, some of the more depressing, anguished, introspective stuff from David Bowie in this. I also hear a little bit of, like, Mr. Bungle, maybe even a little bit of, like, System of a Down or Black Midi in some of the most, like, guitar-centric moments and some of the most frenzied and hectic moments. It's angular and totally unpredictable and just totally flat-out fucking bonkers and bizarre at times. Like, to the point where if we were to do a full-blown album review, I literally wouldn't even know where to begin talking about this fucking thing. I would say that this album and Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum as a whole is like the yang to Diablo Swing Orchestra's yin. And as much as I'm personally enjoying this because I'm just fascinated by it, I honestly would not recommend this to you unless you were truly, absolutely in the mood to just listen to some weird, fucked up nonsense. Next up, we have Creation Undone from Morta Skuld, who apparently have been kicking around for close to 30 years. I've never heard of them, like, ever, at all, ever. But if their previous material is anything like this, I might be inclined to change that. I might be inclined to look up some other albums from their discography. It's straightforward, but very fun, like classic death metal kind of stuff. Lots of groovy barrages and bloodthirsty, sickening riffs and bellowing guttural vocals. I like that the bass has a nice prominent feel in the forefront of the sound. I also like that there are some more complex grooves and arrangements here and there that provide a little bit of color and versatility without detracting from that really old school flavor and feel. It kind of feels like a mix of classic sounds from Obituary, Morbid Angel, and Immolation, at least to me. I dig it, it's fun. If you like death metal, you're probably gonna dig it too. Check it out. Next up, we have Sound and Fury, brand new studio album from Dustbolt. It has been a long time since I thought of these guys. I still remember when they dropped their debut, Violent Demolition, back in 2013, because I was a big fan of that record back in the day. From what I understand with this record, they're venturing more into the realms of like hard rock and groove metal, kind of trying to broaden their sound a little bit, and the reaction has been mixed, but leaning towards negative from metalheads, at least from the metalheads I've spoken to. I read one comment from one person who said that this might be the most disappointing album of 2024, and I'm inclined to disagree, frankly. Haha, plot twist, I bet you thought I was gonna shit on this record. Well, I'm not. I mean, look, it's not perfect, but I don't mind it, honestly. It kind of reminds me of when Anthrax was starting to switch up their sound a little bit in the early 90s with the sound of White Noise, when they had John Bush on vocals. It also feels kind of in line with some of the better material from like 90s Metallica on the Black Album, obviously, but even on like Load and Reload. In fact, it wouldn't shock me if Dustbolt cited those albums as influences on this thing's sound. It has strong hooks, it has some strong grooves, mixed in with some potent old-school thrash energy and momentum from time to time. Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely a few moments where I'm ever so slightly encouraged to roll my eyes a little bit. Take, for instance, the title track, Sound and Fury, You Make Me Feel Nothing as well, Burning Pieces. But am I convinced that this is the most disappointing album of the year? The worst album of the year? Am I convinced that Dustbolt sold out? Absolutely not. Next up, we have Swords of Dajjal, I want to say, or Dajjal? I don't know. Brand new studio album from Necrowretch. It kicks ass. Fiery, intense, brutal black and death metal with venomous, acidic, howling, growling vocal assaults, some really great hellish riffage. Love the overall, like, feel and the atmosphere of this thing. Like, I feel like I'm in the midst of, like, a horrific ritual gone wrong. It remains ferocious all the way through, even when it does slow down here and there, even when it does even throw in some more acoustic guitars. In fact, if anything, suddenly the mood is a lot darker, and this thing feels a lot more intimate and ominous. Just a really solid record all the way through. Kind of reminds me of that Spirit Possession from last year as well, just in terms of like the energy and intensity and the overall like feeling of it. If you're in the mood for some really fucking nasty dark black and death metal, boom, this is definitely it. Next up, we have Echoes of Light from Chapel of Disease, who I haven't really thought about in a long time. Happy to see they're back, and happy to see that they're stretching their wings and flexing their muscles and trying new things on this brand new studio album, bringing in more progressive metal influence, some dreamier soundscapes and atmospheres, almost like goth rock, goth metal-esque spices and garnishes as well. The result is something that is very emotional, with a lot of light and life and color. It's more lush, and it's more evocative, and it's more intimate. You'll have these slower hard rock progressions with like progressive guitar work and these dreamier passages and these moodier vocal passages, contrasted with some ferocious like cackling extreme metal vocals. It's a very interesting combination of sounds that doesn't always work, but it remains always very interesting. Like, I don't find myself missing too much of the older Chapel of Disease style stuff. Like, I don't find myself going, oh man, I wish this were more brutal. Like, I'm invested in what Chapel of Disease are doing right now, and I think it's really cool. This is gonna sound weird, but it honestly kind of feels like a mix of like late 2010s Tribulation and Elder. I hope that makes sense. That's what I feel, that's what I'm hearing, and I'm digging it, honestly. Next up, we have Funeral for a King from Stigan Crown. I don't really have a ton to say about this thing, to be honest. It's epic, old-school doom metal in the vein of, like, classic Candlemass, with some heavier shades and riffs here and there. It's very big, and very dark, and very moody, and very brutish. Love the vibe and the feel of this thing. I like some of those more simplistic, churning riffs that give way to those classic plowing doom metal barrages. The vocal work on here is just consistently fantastic. It's really everything you want from just a good old-fashioned fucking doom metal record. What more do you want me to say? If you like doom metal, you're probably gonna like this record, straight the fuck up. And finally, let's start wrapping things up with Shame from Meth. I've heard a lot about this album. A lot of people in the Metal Meltdown Discord have been talking about this thing, and I can see why. Just sludgy, agonizing black metal, tons of screaming vocals, tons of pulverizing riffs and barrages. It's slow and monotonous and consistently communicates an extreme amount of pain and pure fucking agony. I think it can become a little aggravating and overwhelming with time as a result of that, but it's hard to deny the incredible emotion on display here. It's hard to deny just how, like, absurdly heavy both sonically and, like, thematically this thing is. Like, this really just occupies a territory similar to, like, God's Country from Chat Pile, where it really just sounds like these guys are just giving up on fucking life, you know? A lot of dissonant textures, a lot of angular, confusing tones. It's slow and it's powerful. Maybe not for the faint of heart, but a pretty interesting record nonetheless. If you just want to listen to some really agonizing, depressing shit, this is it. And voila! Those are all the albums that I feel I've missed in the month of February 2024. If you think there's anything else, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. Comment on all of these records as well. Let me know what you think. Do you like these records? Do you not like these records? So on and so forth. Press this button to subscribe. Look, there's even more videos here. I hope to see you at the live stream, the Resident Evil 4 drinking game, this Friday. That'd be great. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.